Hello everyone, welcome back. Why in our spoilers? New Year's Eve in Genoa City is always wrapped in lights and promises that everything will somehow be fine, but for Daniel and Tessa, the night opens like a clean cut straight into their most fragile need, the need to cling to someone. When the person who matters is slipping out of reach, Tessa steps into that moment not as a spouse calmly waiting for a return, but as someone standing in front of a door that has already slammed shut inside her, where she is trying to get the same tomato, keep her responsibility, keep her dignity, and keep Mariah with the thinnest thread left, hope. But hope has been worn down for weeks, and that night it mutates into something more dangerous. A craving to be loved immediately, no matter what it costs. It starts with something that looks harmless, music. A guitar dissolves distance faster than any comfort speech ever could. Tessa plays as if she is borrowing sound to drown out the panic in her chest, while Daniel sits with the patience of a man who has been a mess before and understands what it means to need a hand to pull you back from the edge. In that moment, Daniel isn't moving like a predator. He looks like someone trying to convince himself that if she just talks, there will still be a path back. But when he finally draws out the newest update about Mariah, the atmosphere changes instantly. Because the truth doesn't arrive with a solution, it arrives with another layer of dread. Mariah has left the clinic in Boston. It is no longer a story about treatment or recovery, but a disappearance with intent. Tessa has tracked her moving west first, then drifting farther south, as if Mariah is trying to outrun the world itself. The most unsettling part is how Tessa knows, not through a call, not through an explanation, but through a tracking app. It feels less like control than desperation. Yet that desperation exposes how long Tessa has been living in fear of being left behind. And after Tessa sends message after message, Mariah answers with something brutally simple: she left. And Tessa should not expect any more news from her at all. Tessa doesn't just read the words, she hears a sentence being carried out. In her mind, every good thing she and Mariah once promised each other is dragged into a question that won't stop bleeding. Did Mariah leave because she needed space, or because she no longer intends to come back? The loss doesn't explode, it seeps in like cold water into bone. And Tessa realizes she is trapped between two kinds of guilt, the guilt of tracking, and the guilt of no longer being strong enough to keep waiting alone. She begins to believe she has already lost Mariah. And once a person believes they have lost someone, they do the cruelest thing to themselves: they give themselves permission to collapse. And they call it freedom. Daniel watches that collapse happen in real time. He has heard enough about Mariah to understand this is not an ordinary break, but a fracture stretched wider by distance, silence, and everything that never got said out loud. He knows that if he steps back, Tessa will fall into a night with no one. And sometimes a single night like that can destroy someone. But if he steps in, he becomes the substitute, the proof of Mariah's worst fear. The name that will make it impossible for Tessa to turn back without condemning herself. That is why Daniel's motive is both tender and dangerous. He wants to save Tessa from the moment she feels she has no one left. But he is also being pulled by the intoxicating feeling of being needed, being trusted, being placed where he was never supposed to belong. When Tessa admits she only wants to be loved tonight, the words land like a key turning in a lock both of them have avoided staring at for too long. Daniel takes her to his bedroom not like a trophy, but like surrendering to the reality that some people don't want advice anymore, they just want arms around them so they can keep breathing. Tessa insists she is sure, as if she needs to say it to hypnotize herself into believing this is not a fall, but a decision. And then they go to bed together, and afterward they insist they have no regrets. As if the absence of regret inside a closed room can erase the truth waiting outside the door. Tomorrow will never feel the same again. But no regrets cannot cancel the storm that is forming. Mariah is still the spouse Tessa has not buried in her heart. And she has not been given permission to let go in any clean, honest way. Mariah's disappearance doesn't only hurt Tessa, it paralyzes her with helplessness. And that helplessness is what pushes her into Daniel's arms. As for Daniel, he can tell himself he isn't breaking a marriage because the marriage was already cracking. Because Mariah was the one who left first. Yet those excuses only survive as long as no one else forces the truth into the light. And the person who can do that sharp and cold as a black-eyed is Lucy. Lucy doesn't have to understand the full depth of Mariah and Tessa's marriage to be shaken by one simple reality: her father has someone new. And that someone is not a stranger. If Lucy finds out, the truth won't stay confined to what adults did in the dark. It will become a child's private terror of being pushed out of her father's world. Kids don't forgive easily when they feel replaced, especially when they've already lived through enough chaos to know that the people they love can leave at any time. The danger isn't just Lucy getting angry, it's Lucy learning to look at Daniel with distance, teaching herself how to survive a father who is changing the direction of his life without asking her to come along. From there, the tension in Genoa City stops being a simple love triangle. It becomes a web of consequences. If Mariah returns, she won't only face the fact that Tessa slept with Daniel, she will face the humiliation of being replaced at the exact moment she was at her weakest, then being punished for the silence she created. If Mariah doesn't return, her absence will turn everyone left behind into permanent villains. Because any choice Tessa and Daniel make will look like betrayal. And if Lucy stands on the side of outrage, Daniel will finally understand that the price of saving Tessa for one night may be losing his daughter's trust. The cruelest twist is that, even after everything, Tessa can still tell herself she and Mariah are waiting for good things ahead. That belief is both a lifeline and a lie. Because good things do not simply arrive after someone crosses the final line of a marriage vow. They only arrive if Mariah still wants to come back, if Tessa has the courage to confess, and if Daniel is honest enough to see that what he did that night didn't just touch Tessa, it touched a whole family, a child, and a wound that is running south into the dark. And when the new year officially begins, the most frightening thing is not that Daniel and Tessa slept together. The most frightening thing is that they have entered a phase where every choice will shatter someone. If Mariah suddenly sends another message, will it be a plea for help or a declaration that she has decided to disappear for good? If Lucy sees Tessa stepping out of Daniel's room, will she stay silent like a forced adult? Or will she do the one thing that makes the secret explode in the heart of the family? And if Tessa wakes up in Daniel's arms feeling loved, will she call it a beginning, or will she finally realize she just lit the match that may burn down every road back to Mariah? The new year in Genoa City is always dressed up like a promise that life can be restarted. But for Daniel and Tessa, the very idea of a fresh beginning already reeks of guilt and panic. After the boundary-crossing kiss that was witnessed at Danny and Christine's wedding, when Phyllis became an unwilling eyewitness to a moment that can't be taken back, shockwaves stop being private. They roll straight into the core of a family and into the fragile frame of a marriage that is already splintering. On the surface, people can call it a romantic scandal. Underneath, it feels like a door has slammed shut behind them. And ahead there is only the heavy sound of consequences walking closer. While Mariah drifts farther away from Tessa, haunted by trauma, swallowed by silence, entangled in shadows she can't yet name, what she leaves behind isn't just loneliness. It is a kind of absence that punishes. Genoa City has been watching Mariah unravel under the weight of old terror and new instability. And every step she takes away from home forces Tessa to live inside a question she cannot answer. Is Mariah running to heal or running to disappear? Tessa is trapped between loyalty and survival, between the vows she still wants to honor and the reality that she is slowly being abandoned, without a clean goodbye. That is where Daniel becomes dangerous. His pull toward Tessa isn't only attraction or heat. It is the empathy of a man still carrying grief that never fully settled, mixed with the most addictive sensation on earth, being needed, being trusted, being chosen as a lifeline at the exact moment he is also trying not to drown. That is why any prediction about Heather returning hits like a bomb. Heather's death in Daniel's mind is not just an event. It is a psychological pillar he clings to in order to keep standing. The more people in Genoa City whisper that some truths around Heather were never fully clean, the more Daniel's pain becomes a haunted room he can't stop walking back into. If Heather comes back, it won't feel like a reunion. It will feel like a trial with no judge, where Daniel is dragged into the light and forced to face the most terrifying question of all. Is the woman standing in front of him real flesh and blood, or a ghost created by trauma, guilt, and a mind under pressure? Daniel won't be able to believe immediately, because believing means admitting that years of suffering may have been built on a cruel lie. But disbelieving means risking that he is breaking apart in a way he can't control. And if Daniel starts to fracture, Tessa won't panic only because she might lose him. She will panic because everything she did with him could be exposed at the worst possible moment, before Mariah has even had the chance to return. And before Lucy can be protected from the truth. Lucy is the fuse that turns rumor into detonation. For Lucy, scandal doesn't begin with who kissed whom, who slept with whom, or what happened behind closed doors. Scandal begins with a double betrayal: the betrayal of Heather's memory, and the betrayal of a child's trust in her father. If Lucy refuses to accept Daniel having someone new, her resistance won't require a public confrontation. It can be small, precise, and sharp: withdrawal, coldness, quiet judgment that forces Daniel to feel condemned even when no one says the words. Lucy can turn Daniel into a man who has to confess even when no one has demanded a confession. And what makes the scandal explode even more violently is that Lucy won't hate the other woman, only because that is the instinct of a hurt child. She may hate because, to her, Tessa becomes proof that Daniel replaced Heather too fast, too easily, too brutally, even if Daniel keeps telling himself he is only trying to survive the aftershock of loss. In that landscape, the possibility of Tessa becoming pregnant is the most catastrophic kind of tragedy, because it locks every character into a chain no one can break. For Mariah, a pregnancy wouldn't be only physical betrayal. It would be a symbol, a living announcement that Tessa built a future with Daniel while Mariah was lost inside her own storm. For Daniel, it would become a moral sentence. He can no longer frame this as a mistake, a moment, an accident, because a new life is an irreversible consequence. For Tessa, it would trigger the perfect punish. She craves love. Yet she fears that love has now turned her into the person who destroys everything she once tried to protect. And for Lucy, a pregnancy would feel like the final blow to Heather's memory, pushing Lucy beyond disapproval into something colder and more dangerous. The urge to pull the truth into daylight in the most unforgiving way possible. The darkest part is that even when everyone can invent reasons to justify themselves, no one is fully innocent. Mariah is not innocent if her silence becomes a weapon that leaves Tessa starving for answers, even if that silence is rooted in trauma and terror. Tessa is not innocent if she let loneliness drive the wheel and then called surrender freedom. Daniel is not innocent because he chose to become the comfort in the wrong place, inside a marriage that has not been cleanly ended. And Lucy is not innocent if she turns pain into a weapon, because when a child is forced to grow up through betrayal, she can do damage that adults never see coming. If Heather returns in the most ambiguous, chilling way, meaning Daniel starts seeing her where she shouldn't be, hearing echoes of her presence, feeling watched, then the story becomes even more terrifying. Daniel will be pulled between two horrors that are equally unbearable. Either Heather is alive, and everything was a lie, or Heather is truly gone and Daniel's mind is collapsing under pressure. In that scenario, Tessa will cling harder to Daniel as a way to save herself. But the harder she clings, the deeper Daniel's guilt will grow, because every moment he needs Tessa is another moment he feels like he is betraying Heather again. And if Mariah returns while Daniel is spiraling, she won't just see an affair. She will see that a new structure has formed in her absence. And she will be forced to ask whether there is still a place for her in Tessa's life, or whether she has become only the memory of a vow that cracked. In the end, what makes the future of this scandal truly frightening is not whether it will be exposed, but how it will be exposed. It could be Lucy catching a detail that can no longer be denied. It could be Heather appearing at the exact worst time, leaving Daniel frozen and Tessa pale with the realization that she has stepped into a nightmare with no exit. And if the pregnancy becomes real, it will force everyone into immediate, brutal choices: confess or conceal, hold on or let go, save one person or wound them all. In Genoa City, choices like that rarely lead to peace. They only decide who breaks first, who breaks second, and who is left to live with the fracture forever. And the most brutal hook of all could arrive in the moment that seems almost calm. Daniel tries to convince himself Heather is only a hallucination, but then he receives a sign that is too real to dismiss, while Lucy quietly begins to connect the pieces with terrifying clarity. If at that very moment, Mariah suddenly walks back in unannounced, unprepared, stepping straight into the center of the storm, what collapses won't be just a relationship. It will be their entire sense of safety, about family, about love, and about whether any of them still deserve forgiveness. TV Spoilers constantly seeks inspiration for each video by compiling short video clips to analyze and offer personal opinions. This channel specializes in analyzing, theorizing, and discussing plot points in the Young and the Restless series from the perspective of a longtime fan. Through this, viewers can gain deeper, more objective, and more interesting insights. Subscribe to the channel to stay updated on the latest news about the Young and the Restless series.